Priti Patel, again, the Home Secretary, she's trying to shove this bill through Parliament called the Nationality and Borders Bill. So, she's really on a roll this year. I'd say the Conservative Party is really on a roll. They've got all sorts of draconian, authoritarian bills that have been rushing, making their way through Parliament, and of course Labour does nothing to stop them. They gladly step aside and let everything through. And one of these things is the Nationality and Borders Bill. The Conservative government, they market it as making asylum seeking more fair and, all kinds of lovely labels, but it's complete nonsense. Now, one of the most striking things in this bill is basically the United Kingdom making it harder for asylum seekers, refugees, to come to the UK. So before, if you enter the UK illegally, knowingly enter the UK unlawfully, you get a punishment of six months in prison, up to 6 months. And they've raised that from 6 months to 4 years to try and deter people from coming to the UK. Because as you know, the UK is such a benevolent nation. They take so many refugees, they just can't handle it anymore, right? No, I'm joking. The UK actually takes less refugees than perhaps most other countries. And the figures I'll show you in a second. This is from the UN Refugee Agency. I want to show you their opinion and legal opinion on this proposed law, right, which has just made its way through the House of Commons. So they're saying, what in a nutshell are the UK's proposed asylum changes? Well, they include restricting access to asylum by introducing a two-tiered approach in which only those who come to the UK through so-called safe and legal pathways will have access to the full benefits of the 1951 Refugee Convention. Most other refugees may be denied many of their rights under the convention, as well as the fundamental human right to family reunion. So, let me translate. It's a violation of international law, and the UK is, of course, a signatory of the 1951 Refugee Convention. And this bill, this Nationality and Borders Bill, violates that convention. Next point, declares many applicants inadmissible and ineligible to claim asylum in the UK because of their connection to a country the UK deems safe, including countries where they have never been or where they were unable to apply for refugee status. Because the UK does not have any agreements to return refugees to other countries, the result is that their cases are placed on hold for around 6 months, significantly increasing backlogs and costs. Right? Another point is introducing the possibility of externalization, sending asylum seekers to other countries the Home Secretary designates as safe. So basically her idea is that instead of taking the refugees and processing them, no, we'll just ship them off to some island that is not in the UK. What if that country, for this particular individual, is, a country where, they might be jailed for something else that has nothing to do with, the refugee application? There are so many possibilities, right? What the UK government deems safe is not necessarily safe for another, another person, someone who's seeking asylum. There's this myth, for example, that France takes less refugees than the UK. Like, everyone is rushing to the UK. That's not true. France takes way more refugees than the UK, right? So does Germany. Again, UK is like at the bottom of the list. And the idea that, they should have stopped in the first country that was safe for them, there's no legal obligation to do that, and there's no logical obligation either, because, more people speak English more than French, just as one example. They might be able to integrate easier. They might have family there. There are a million other reasons why they might choose that country over another. There's a reason why some people, for example, from Syria applied for refugee status in Canada, not Germany, because they don't speak German. They might speak English or French. So there's a million reasons, and this is basically the UK trying to renege on its obligations as a signatory of the Refugee Convention. These are arbitrary, unilateral designations that the UK is trying to impose on its obligations as a signatory. And so, as I told you, there's introducing this new criminal offense, right, of people arriving in the UK without entry clearance, meaning illegally. The maximum sentence of arriving without clearance, entering unlawfully, or overstaying will be increased to 4 years. So from 6 months to 4 years. And those helping asylum seekers come to the UK would also be criminalized, even when this is not for gain, and regardless of whether or not the asylum seeker arrived irregularly. That means, because of course there's a problem with human trafficking. No one is denying that. There are people who make tons of money, trafficking people, exploiting people who are trying to escape war, trying to escape, economic misery. And so they may, of course, that's an issue in itself, but that's not what the UK is doing here. They don't care if you're making money by helping someone. They don't care what your motives are if you're doing it for criminal gain. They'll just punish you. It's like, screw you for helping someone who's seeking asylum, even if you're completely innocent, you're not a criminal, you're just someone who's trying to help in any capacity. No, they want to criminalize you, right? And by the way, just as one more thing, which I'll show you in another article, Priti Patel, right, who's sponsoring this legislation and who's put it forward, Originally, she wanted to punish people at sea, sailors, boats that rescue drowning refugees. Like, this is really not the nicest of people, right? So if you're sailing in the channel and you see someone who's literally drowning, she wanted to jail you because you saved their life. Another thing in this bill, which is absolutely scandalous, because again, it doesn't just deal with asylum seekers, it deals with British citizens. This started with the war on terror, of course, like all great things. And the UK has been stripping people of citizenship, right? And then they say, well, it's just a terrorist. They went off, etc., to join some group. And they're terrorists. Who's going to defend a terrorist? Take their nationality. But now what Priti Patel is trying to do is she's trying to make it so that the government doesn't even have to tell you. They don't even have to tell you that they took your citizenship away. Look at this. So this is Clause 9. Under the Nationality and Borders Bill, right? Notice of decision to deprive a person of citizenship. The required notice to be given to a person to be deprived of citizenship does not apply if it appears to the Secretary of State, meaning Priti Patel, that the Secretary of State does not have the information needed to be able to give notice under that subsection. So, for example, they could say, well, we sent this letter to your last known address, and, you didn't give us your new address when you moved, so that's it. Or they could just simply say, we don't know where you live. That's why we couldn't tell you. And then they say here that they don't have to tell you they've taken your citizenship if it would for any other reason not be reasonably practicable to give notice under that subsection, or that it's in the interests of national security, or in the interests of the relationship between the UK and another country, Israel, the United States, or otherwise in the public interest. Whatever that means, right? Again, with these ambiguous, ridiculously loosely defined terms. It's for national security, right? It's like the one about, Christ, I'm losing count. They've passed so many authoritarian, draconian bills this year. I'm losing count which one it was. It's all of them, right? Oh, national security, or in the economic interests of the UK, we can shut down a protest, and so on. And so this is the kind of crap that they've passed through the Commons, and now it's gone to the Lords. And I want to play you a short clip from Davis, right? So he's an MP. And I want you to see what he has to say about this idea that you can just strip people of citizenship without even telling them.
The right of citizenship in this country, in 1850, I think A.J.P. Taylor said it was the greatest speech in Parliament, was Palmerston's speech on the Don Pacifico affair, when he talked about the Civis Romanus Sum, speech about the rights of a British citizen. And of course in those days that meant rights to be protected around the world rather than what American citizens are now. It doesn't mean that anymore. But what it does mean are rights under our democracy. Rights to access to a member of parliament so they can stand up for you. Rights to freedom under the law. Rights to the judiciary, to the courts. I know they're unfashionable now, but rights to the operation of British justice. Something which is one of the most valued things in the world, and it's what we are defending in these contests in the Middle East and elsewhere. And it seems to me entirely inappropriate that we should make one of our strategies that of being able to take away citizenship from people who very often have lived here since they were 1 or 2 years old. Very often, if they were sent to the other country, which they've never been to and don't speak the language anymore, they will face summary execution. At least one case that applies. Where stands our belief against the capital punishment, which most of the people in this House espouse? So this is an uncivilized, legally disputable removal of the rights of people who may not be good people, but then put them in front of our courts and punish them. That's the way British justice would work, that's the way British democracy should work, and that's what we should do today.
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to take a more reasonable approach. He's saying, instead of stripping people of citizenship, you know, you could just take them to court and try them, couldn't you? If you want justice or some sort of accountability. And he says, you know, British justice and so on. Yes, well, on paper, it looks very good. I can tell you, having covered numerous court cases this year, British justice is perhaps not what it used to be. The problem with this, let me explain something to you, is that they've used this so far on people like terrorists, you know, people who've committed obscene crimes, you know, who've gone off and joined ISIS and so on. And who the hell's going to protest that? You know, screw ISIS. The problem, though, is that this is where it starts. Today, they're stripping the nationality of terrorists. Tomorrow, who are they going to strip of nationality? Whose citizenship will they take away? If you give them such awesome, unfettered power. Who can stop them? No one can stop them. They don't even have to tell you. And you know what that means when they don't have to tell you, or if that you are not properly informed that your citizenship has been taken away. I mean, which in and of itself is you know, is uncivilized, as Davis called it. But that means you lose your right of appeal. If the government hasn't even told you that they've taken away your citizenship, and you find out years later, you can't appeal that anymore, can you? At least it's going to be extremely difficult to do that, if anyone will even listen. And there's this article in the Guardian about Patel, right? And this was written by, well, it's just an Observer editorial, but they're basically talking about their view on Priti Patel's fake migrant crisis, right? Going back to the issue of asylum seekers. And they say that Patel, well, first of all, let me just read you a few bits of it from the beginning, right? So basically, in her 2-year tenure at the Home Office, she's announced a series of initiatives to put people off seeking asylum in the UK. Wave machines in the Channel, flying asylum seekers to inhospitable islands thousands of miles away to be processed, criminalizing those who rescue people drowning at sea. All are recent measures proposed by the Home Secretary, regardless of their compatibility with international law and Britain's moral obligations. Patel gives the impression that there is an escalating crisis in terms of the numbers of people arriving in the UK and trying to illegitimately claim refuge. This is not true. There is absolutely a crisis for asylum seekers trying to reach British shores by making the treacherous channel crossing in small boats and dinghies. The British government should be doing all it can to clamp down on the people traffickers, making a fortune by charging desperate people to attempt the crossing. It's true. But the number of people coming to the UK to claim asylum fell by 4% last year and stands at less than half what it was in the early 2000s. Britain receives a fraction of the asylum applications of Germany and France, and fewer per resident than the EU average. Low-income countries host 9 out of 10 displaced people worldwide. That's absolutely true. I can tell you just as one example, when the UK and the US invaded Iraq, where do you think most Iraqi refugees went? They went next door to Syria. They went, in the neighboring countries. Millions of them became refugees. It's not the US and the UK who started that war, who created this chaos, which is, still going on to this day, 20 years later. They didn't take the bulk of the refugees. Do you think the same is true of Afghanistan? Certainly not. Iran alone, right, because they're a neighboring country to Afghanistan, they have millions of Afghan refugees. It's at least 1 million, at the very least 1 million Afghan refugees. So it's not Europe, it's not the United States who start these wars, who create the refugees in the first place, who are taking them. So this is an imaginary crisis, and it's absolutely disgusting when you read the right-wing comments in the UK about, we're already unemployed, send the refugees back, like as if they're dying to come and steal your job. These people weren't trying to come to the UK in the first place until, we invaded them and screwed their country up. That's a fact. The other issue, which, I find absolutely disgusting, is they try to make a difference between economic migrants and refugees, like as if having the economy destroyed by sanctions or centuries of colonialism is any better. What? Why do you Listen, why do you think there are developing countries? Why do you think people try to go from the global south to the north? Because the global north, the West, in other words, is rich. And why is the West rich? Because they stole that shit. They spent centuries stealing and plundering resources and killing and colonizing. That's how they got rich. And so the people are going there either because of colonialism, because they've been put at a disadvantage. That's why you have developing countries, because they've been set back. And why have they been set back? Colonialism, imperialism, resources have been stolen. Even when you have sanctions on a country or war, you have brain drain as well. So, for example, architects, people. Again, I don't like this distinction between skilled labor and unskilled labor. It's all labor at the end of the day, right? But whether we're talking about people who are quote-unquote skilled labor or unskilled labor, everyone is fleeing, right? You have people without diplomas, with diplomas. They're all fleeing to these richer countries. And who's benefiting from this workforce? Again, they benefit in another way, right? So there's nothing about this Nationality and Borders Bill which protects the United Kingdom from illegal immigrants or whatever, as if that's not even a real crisis to begin with, or people who are pretending to be, asylum seekers. And the United Kingdom, I mean, as the UN put it, the United Kingdom can protect its borders and have a fair system that takes in asylum seekers, that complies with the Refugee Convention. At the same time, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to screw over refugees again, right, after displacing them, destroying their countries, by sending them off to facilities and creating a giant backlog and criminalizing them. I mean, I can tell you something, man. People are not dying to, leave their family behind and cross the channel in a dinghy. Really not. I mean, they're literally dying to do it, but in the sense of the phrase in English, they don't want to go do that. No one is crazy about going, in a tiny boat across the channel and potentially drowning just to get to the UK and leaving their family behind. I mean, like they act like, it's some kind of they're going to have a red carpet rolled out for them, and someone's going to kiss their ass when they get to the UK. It's unbelievable, right? So, once again, this is a very concerning bill. It's an authoritarian, it's a draconian bill, just like the overseas operations bill where they're legalizing war crimes, just like the police court sentencing and crimes bill where they're making protests illegal, giving extraordinary powers to the police. And just like the spy cops bill, right? It's literally a list now of just the worst imaginable bills that give the police the power to spy on you, to spy on activists, anyone, in the interests of the interests of the UK's economy and in the interests of national security. Either one is fine. And giving UK troops immunity for war crimes and criminalizing asylum seekers that the UK has helped create in many ways, centuries of colonialism, helping the US destroy other countries now. Threatening to just strip people of citizenship without even telling them. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. And I understand when people say that it feels like the media or the government itself is distracting, is trying to take attention away from these bills with this Christmas party nonsense. I mean, I think all of them are important, right? The Christmas party one is, again, it's the same thing. It's just showing you that the UK is not a democracy. There are two sets of rules depending on your role in society, whether you're in the government, you're an elite, how big your wallet is, and whether you're a pleb, a peasant, a commoner, That's what it shows. And here's the same thing. I want to tell you one thing about Priti Patel, because she's the Home Secretary. She's authored a lot of these bills and championed them and trying to get them through Parliament. And she wants to stop people from coming to the UK. She was famously asked not too long ago whether her own parents would have been able to come to the UK under her immigration laws, because you have to keep in mind her parents are Indian, and I think they were living in Uganda for a while. So she's Indian, Ugandan, right? So she herself is a child of immigrants who came to the UK. And now she's trying to make it harder for people to emigrate to the UK. I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's this whole attitude of screw you, I got mine.